Hello and welcome to the Aspect TV YouTube channel. We welcome Dr. Vladimir Brovkin to the show. We appreciate his time and expertise and talking to us. I would like to start with you, Dr. Brovkin. You must have heard about the victory plan of Zelensky. So, what do you make of it?
If you listen to the proceedings of the conference in September, Pompeo and also I think General Westmoreland, they said an interesting thing. They said, "What is there for us Americans? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we're spending billions and billions and billions, and of course, it's about justice and it's about people of Ukraine. It's international law, blah 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 blah. But what's there for us?" And the reason I bring it up is because I think Zelensky, in his latest version of the victory plan, peace plan, he has an answer to the Americans and he added it in his program, which is absolutely incredible, significant, maddening, whatever you call the reaction. The plan is that there will be joint development of Ukrainian resources by
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine's partners and allies. If you translate it into normal English, it would be that the BlackRock is going to get Ukrainian land, and American corporations are going to get zinc and cobalt and what else Ukraine may have. In other words, he is paying for the service of NATO fighting for him against Russia with natural resources of Ukraine, which basically is a sellout of Ukrainian national interests. I think in a normal country, he should be impeached and tried for treason because you cannot simply just give away the only thing that's left
Yeah.
of Ukraine to foreign powers just because they help you fight the war that they are more interested to fight than you are. So that's an amazing kind of thing. He kind of put a carrot. Oh, you want something for you? Here's what you can get for you. And that's, of course, amazing. Another thing which I find extraordinary is that there's absolutely no talk about Russia. I mean, they are fighting Russia, but he's talking about what part of whether they will join NATO, whether NATO is going to fight for them, whether NATO is going to put in troops, whether NATO is going to put strategic weapons, whether NATO will give them missiles to shoot into Russia. All of this, as if Russia doesn't matter at all in this plan. It's like
Mm-hmm.
if you want to negotiate, you kind of have to figure out what is your position, what's their position, how you can bring them together. This is what Orban is trying to do. But Zelensky seems to be totally preoccupied with his standing in among Western leaders. And he puts all his cards into one basket, which is support from the West. But even there, he's beginning to lose. There's weakening of support because nobody wants to put missiles. They cost a lot of money, as Americans have just told him that it's much more effective to fight with drones. Each missile costs several $1 million. It's not worth it, and it's not going to change the course of the war. In other words, of all the points that he said, three of four first ones: NATO membership, missiles, permission to shoot into Russia, a stationing of Western troops, shooting Russian missiles with air defenses from Poland. All of them, he got the answer: no, 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 from Western capitals. So
Yeah.
it was a total disaster for him. He went to London, Berlin, Paris, and Rome, and in all four, he said, no, that won't work. That won't work. It's premature for membership. So I think that this, what else now? How he came up with a fresh idea. If you don't defend us, he says, we will restore nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Now, this is amendment. I want to have a video that would say dead man walking, because this
Mhm.
is a no-no for everybody, not only for Russia, but also for the United States. The United States does not want Ukraine to be nuclear power or any other for that matter. So in this sphere, the interests of the United States and Russia are the same. Both of course, China too, and probably Britain and France. All nuclear powers do not want any more nuclear powers. And so this is, Putin today said, if they make any steps in this direction, Putin said today, we will know. We have the capacity to follow, to know, and take appropriate measures. So
Yeah.
this is not going to work.
Yeah, you correctly mentioned that all, European capitals are distancing themselves from Zelensky in some way because their economies are also under extreme pressure from within. And the sanction they imposed on Russia, they are, in many ways biting themselves instead of biting Russia. For example, their industry is collapsing. Especially you see German industry is in extreme pressure, and the gas they were buying from Russia, now they're buying through India. The same gas they're
Yeah.
buying through India with a higher cost. So what was the calculation? How they calculated these sanctions, and why they not realizing to change the course?
Well, it's the political struggle within the European elites. We briefly talked about it last time. There are these Atlanticists who are in power in most European capitals, at least in the north of Europe, Britain, France, Germany, Sweden, Poland. And then there are new forces that are slowly coming to the fore. And that's, of course, Urban is the greatest example, but also Popular Party in Austria that won elections. They don't let them come to power. The Alternative for Germany in Germany, and Front Populaire in France. And even in Italy, the current administration, they keep on talking about supporting Ukraine, but when it comes to actually giving missiles or permissions or anything, Italy is certainly out, is not at the same level of engagement as even France. Or Britain. I mean, that's completely different world. So I sort of tend to see that Southern Europe is not enthusiastic about the continuation of war and would welcome peace negotiations and going back to normalcy. But what I also see is that these forces are beginning to assert themselves in Germany, and which is crucial factor. And that's the recent elections. And even Scholz changed his tune in a month. I mean, he still was reluctant in a month to talk about giving towers, but he was saying, we're thinking, maybe, blah, 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 and we're going to give this and that and maybe more tanks. But now, just a couple of days ago, he said, absolutely, definitely no. We're not
Mhm.
giving towers and we're not giving permission, and we're cutting money because we don't have what we have is for ourselves, which means that Scholz is beginning to speak the language of the electorate. He understands that if things go the way they do, his party is going to collapse next elections in 25. So he's beginning to change his tune, and that's very important because that's like crucial. As for economy, I live in France, and situation is terrible
Mm.
economically. In other words, it doesn't affect people. Still have pretty high level of living. They go to work, the cars and shops and everything's fine, except huge floods. But when you talk about the budget, I mean, there is no money. They don't know where to take 20 billions for this and 20 billion for that. I mean, social services, immigration, all these issues are very much at the forefront. And that means that they all say, well, it's because of war in Ukraine, it's because of the high energy costs. Well, Mr. Macron, it's very easy to make them less expensive. You just open up the pipeline to Russia and then the prices will come down.
Come down, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, you see, other day, President Trump also blamed Zelensky for starting this war and, the coming election in United States. And the both candidate are also, mentioning Russia, Ukraine, and Israel-Palestine issue on and off. And other day, President Trump say about Zelensky, quite, I think, derogatory remarks, comparing him with a salesman who showed up on
Yes.
American doorstep and, trying to sell a victory plan for $100 billion, and every time he comes, he gets something like that. So what do you think, what will be the future of this war after this election? Do you think this election will be a turning point for this conflict?
Yes, they could be. They could be. I for quite some time, I thought that it doesn't make much difference. In fact, a few weeks ago, I still thought that from the point of view of the war in Ukraine coming to an end, maybe even Kamala Harris was better, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Because my reasoning was very simple, that uh, Kamala Harris doesn't decide anything. Kamala Harris' presidency will be that she's going to do what she's told. And you could see it already. She's like reading, the statement on Palestine, just basically trying to read and not make any mistakes. She doesn't have any ideas of her own, which means it's going to be the Pentagon. And in the Pentagon, there are reasonable people. They know the capabilities of the United States. They know how many missiles they have. They know the amount of aid they would need to, as a first priority, to give to Israel. So they're not really particularly interested in escalating the war with Russia, especially when Russia has shown itself to be a very formidable opponent and a strong army and a nuclear power. And what for? Just to gain Ukraine into the NATO? How would it strengthen the United States security?
Mm-hmm.
It might be a good thing for them if they were on the offensive. But if they're going into the defensive because they have other priorities in China and in the Middle East, then settling the war would be their next best thing. Now I said something happened that changed my mind a little bit, which is that when I listened to today's press conference of President Putin, I asked myself, who is this a message for?
Mm-hmm.
Because he repeated things that are quite clear, pretty much what he said in July, which is 4 provinces and the neutral status of Ukraine, which is number one, which is the top priority.
Mm-hmm.
Who is this a message for? And I answer this question, this is a message to Trump. This is a
Okay.
message to Trump and to China and to Brazil. To China and Brazil, the message is, yes, we're with you. We understand. We do want to negotiate. We are ready for some sacrifices, some concessions. And to Trump, basically the message is this. If you, Trump, really mean it to put the end to the war, this is the formula. Neutral Ukraine, and just 4 provinces. Now, of course, people are saying that the demarcation line should be the borderline. Putin already made it quite clear that's not negotiable because officially the 4 provinces are the part of the Russian Federation. So the Donbass, and I mean, which is Lugansk and Donetsk and Kherson and Zaporozhye. Now, Kherson city is not in Russian control. It's on the other side of the Dnieper River. Zaporozhye city is also on the other side of the Dnieper River. So, and to actually take it by force will be quite costly and difficult because you have to go over the river with the tanks and things. So basically, Putin said, these 4 provinces are ours and neutral status, then we can sign peace. And he also said very clearly, no ceasefire, so that they could rearm and then continue the war. It's not a matter of ceasefire, only international peace treaty, which is difficult. And it's only Trump or American president can do it, nobody else. The Europeans would not be able to carry enough weight to convince all of NATO countries. It has to be an international treaty where there would be the signatures of the United States, of NATO countries, and of China as a great power, and of Brazil. So in that sense, it has to be an international conference where peace could be signed. The very idea that it is theoretically possible is exciting because if things go right, one could have an international conference in February after Trump's inauguration, if he wins, and then agree on new architecture of security in Europe with Ukraine in neutral status, no basis, and then perhaps some relaxation of tensions, maybe even sanctions go to an end. But there are many people who don't want sanctions to end, and many of them are in the United States, because it's not only against Russia and Ukraine. It is also about German economy. Yeah. And if the Russian oil starts flowing back again, then American business interests might be not so excited about it. So it's a very, very complex issue. But as far as the situation now is concerned, it is a message to Trump. Yes, you can do it with my help.
We're all looking forward how these elections unfold and what is, coming ahead. So you mentioned the Putin's interview, and I could not get a chance so far. So because it was, I think, this morning. So what do you make of this interview where he speak to BRICS journalists, and how do you find this interaction
Yes,
with international media?
Well, there were some things that he repeated are pretty much well known, and there's not much new, but there were some things that he said that are quite interesting and revealing as to what we're going. Number one is that I think BRICS process is a priority for Putin, and this is amazing. It's a priority. It's more important for him than Ukraine. Ukraine is important, but not as important at this moment. Why is that? It's because Russia's future now is tied to trade mechanisms with China, India, other BRICS countries, and also 40 other countries that are lining up to join BRICS. In other words, I think Putin is positioning himself to be a world leader, a leader of a world majority that is building up a new kind of system of international relations, which is, he puts it as a multi-centered world. But not only that, I think it's also a kind of a grouping where many countries of Asia and Africa feel more at home. They feel more respect. They feel there's no colonial past. They feel that there could be disagreements. In other words, it's not simply kind of Western-dominated world. You join us, therefore you join Western rules, such as in World Bank, IMF, and so on. So from this kind of cultural, geopolitical aspect is number one. Number two, and that is even more important for economy, he said we're not launching a BRICS currency. No, that's not going to happen for many, many years. But we are launching is a new payment mechanism, and that is crucial. That is absolutely, by linking banks of BRICS countries, central banks, on payment mechanism. That means alternative to SWIFT. This has never been done before. This is like absolutely revolutionary, because you do have now countries that have no idea where Ukraine is and don't particularly care, but they do care. Where do they get their wheat? Where do they get their oil? Where do they get their know-how? Where do they get their chips? Now they can have an alternative system. And it doesn't mean they can't use SWIFT. They can use both. But SWIFT cannot punish them for this. The Americans cannot punish. In other words, if there is some company, for example, let's say China or India, there's a company that does business with Russia, and then it wants to do business with the United States. The United States says, no. You do business with Russia? No, you're sanctioned. We're not going to deal with it. Now they can do business and nobody would know. There's no way you can trace it, because it's this electronic commitment from them to their government, and their government through central banks to other central banks. It's untraceable, unpunishable. And that is absolutely incredible. In fact, maybe in retrospect, historians would look at it and say, Putin changed the world order because he created an alternative way of doing business, which is not Western centered. And he also quoted Modi in a very, he loved this expression and he quoted him twice. He said that Modi said, BRICS is not anti-Western. It is simply not Western. And Putin loved it, meaning that it's not against the West, but it's just not a West. It's like our own, uh,
Hmm.
where we can do things we want our way. So I
Yeah.
think these are the most important takeaways from this, and many others. Putin is very impressive how he handles all this incredible information. He talked to Ethiopian journalists asked him, and he had all the figures about trade with Ethiopia and the challenges in Ethiopia.
Mhm.
And then some, Qatari asked him, and he knew all about the trade with Qatar and Qatar's position. He's absolutely amazing how he can handle and the knowledge, how he careful, he not an extra word about Palestine, several issues, and whether Russia would support Iran in case there's a war. He was so cautious. He says, "Oh, we're in touch with the Israelis and we're in touch with Iranians, and we hope that we're going to be able to bring them to negotiating table." So he's an amazing diplomat, amazing person who controls this huge amount of information and can handle it without offending anybody. So in that sense, it was an amazing performance.
Yeah, Dr. Brovkin, you're right. We are seeing a new alternative world order in unfolding right in front of our eyes. And the West has used this SWIFT for a long time in their favor to achieve their foreign policy and economical interests. So we will continue talking on all these geopolitical issues in future, and we really appreciate your insightful, informations and interview with us. We thank you for your time.
Thank you.